Hey, blessings, book two. We haven't had a fairy tale in a while. I thought it was about time. And we got Puss in Boots, one of the best, by Charles Perrault. I'm actually going to read you an Andrew Lang version. Andrew Lang did versions of almost every folk tale, fairy tale, uh, legend you can think of. This one's from his Blue Fairy book, in the interest of space. So this is quite short. Um, So I'm going to read that to you, and then, as always, I'm going to share the Bullwinkle version of the story, which is usually takes some liberties. So this is called The Master Cat or Puss in Boots by Charles Perrault. There was a miller whose only inheritance to his three sons was his mill, his donkey, and his cat. The division was soon made. They hired neither a clerk nor an attorney, for they would have eaten up all the poor patrimony. The eldest took the mill, the second the donkey, and the youngest nothing but the cat. The poor young fellow was quite comfortless for having received so little. My brothers, said he, may make a handsome living by joining their shares together. But for my part, after I have eaten up my cat and made myself a muff from his skin, I must then die of hunger. The cat, who heard all this, but pretended otherwise, said to him with a grave and serious air, do not be so concerned, my good master. If you will but give me a bag and have a pair of boots made for me, then I may scamper through the dirt and the brambles. Then you shall see that you are not so poorly off with me as you imagine. Now the cat's master did not build very much hope upon what he said. However, he had often seen him play a great many cunning tricks to catch rats and mice, such as hanging by his heels or hiding himself in the meal and pretending to be dead. So he did take some hope that he might give him some help in his miserable condition. After receiving what he had asked for, the cat gallantly pulled on the boots and slung the bag around his neck. Holding its drawstrings in his forepaws, he went to a place where there was a great abundance of rabbits. He put some bran and greens into the bag, then stretched himself out as if he were dead. He thus waited for some young rabbits, not yet acquainted with the deceits of the world, to come and look into his bag. Now he had scarcely lain down before he had what he wanted. A rash and foolish young rabbit jumped into his bag, and the master cat immediately closed the strings, then took and killed him without pity. Proud of his prey, he went with it to the palace and asked to speak with his majesty. He was shown upstairs into the king's apartment, and, making a low bow, said to him, Sir, I have brought you a rabbit from my noble lord, the master of Carabas, for that was the title which the cat was pleased to give his master. Tell your master, said the king, that I thank him, and that I am very pleased with his gift. Another time he went and hid himself in a grain field. He again held his bag open, and when a brace of partridges ran into it, he drew the strings and caught them both. He presented them to the king, as he had done before with the rabbit, and the king in like manner received the partridges with great pleasure, and gave him a tip. The cat continued, from time to time with 2 or 3 months, to take game to his majesty from his master. One day, when he knew for certain that the king would be taking a drive along the riverside with his daughter, the most beautiful princess in the world, he said to his master, If you will follow my advice, your fortune is made. All you must do is go and bathe yourself in the river at the place I show you. Leave the rest to me. The Marquis of Carabas did what the cat advised him to, without knowing why. While he was bathing, the king passed by, and the cat began to cry out, Help, help! My lord Marquis of Carabas is going to be drowned. Excuse me, we're having terrible air quality in Bangkok at the moment. My eyes are running badly. So the Marquis is in the water here, and Puss in Boots is calling for the king. Now, at this noise, the king put his head out of the coach window, and finding it was the cat who had so often brought him such good game, he commanded his guards to run immediately to the assistance of his lordship, the Marquis of Carabas. And while they were drawing the poor Marquis out of the river, the cat came up to the coach and told the king that, while his master was bathing, some rogues had come by and stolen his clothes, even though he had cried out, Thieves, thieves, several times. as loud as he could. In truth, the cunning cat had hidden his clothes under a large stone. The king immediately commanded the officers of his wardrobe to run and fetch one of his best suits for the Lord Marquis of Carabas. The king received him very courteously, and because the king's fine clothes gave him a striking appearance, for he was very handsome and well proportioned, the king's daughter took a secret inclination to him. The Marquis of Carabas had only to cast 2 or 3 respectful, somewhat tender glances at her, but she fell head over heels in love with him. The king asked him to enter the coach and join them on their drive. The cat, quite overjoyed to see how his project was succeeding, ran on ahead. Meeting some countrymen who were mowing a meadow, he said to them, "My good fellows, if you do not tell the king that the meadow you are mowing belongs to my lord Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped up like mincemeat." The king did not fail to ask the mowers whose meadow it was that they were mowing. "It belongs to my lord Marquis of Carabas," they answered all together, for the cat's threats had frightened them. "You see, sir," said the Marquis, "this is a meadow which never fails to yield a plentiful harvest every year." The master cat, still running on ahead, met with some reapers and said to them, "My poor fellows, if you do not tell the king that all his grains belong to the Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped up like mincemeat." The king, who passed by a moment later, asked them whose grain it was they were reaping. "It belongs to my lord Marquis of Carabas," replied the reapers, which pleased both the king and the Marquis. The king congratulated him with his fine harvest, and for his fine harvest, and the master cat continued around ahead and said the same words to all he met. The king was astonished at the vast estates of the lord Marquis of Carabas. The master cat came at last to a stately castle, the lord of which was an ogre, the richest that had ever been known, and all the lands which the king had just passed by belonged to his castle. The cat, who had taken care to inform himself who this ogre was and what he could do, asked to speak to him, saying he could not pass so near his castle without having the honor to pay his respects. Now the ogre received him as civilly as an ogre can do, and invited him to sit. "I've heard," said the cat, "that you are able to change yourself into any kind of creature you mind. For example, can you transform yourself into a lion or an elephant or the like?" "This is true," answered the ogre very briskly, "and to convince you, I shall now become a lion." The cat was so terrified at the sight of the lion, so near him, that he leaped onto the roof, which caused him even more difficulty, because his boots were of no use to him at all walking on the tiles. However, the ogre resumed his natural form, and the cat came down, saying they had been very frightened indeed. You can tell by the tiled roofs that we are in Spain. "I had further been told," said the cat, "that you have also transformed yourself into the smallest of examples. For example, a rat or a mouse, but I can scarcely believe that. I must admit to you that I think that would be quite impossible." "Impossible!" cried the ogre. "You shall see." He immediately changed himself into a mouse and began to run around the floor. Now, as soon as the cat saw this, he fell upon him and ate him up. Meanwhile, the king, who saw this fine castle of the ogres as he passed, decided to go inside. The cat heard the noise of his majesty's coach running over the drawbridge, ran over and said to the king, "Your majesty is welcome to the castle of my lord Marquis of Carabas." "What, my lord Marquis?" cried the king. "And does this castle also belong to you? There can be nothing finer than this court and all the stately buildings which surround it. Let us go inside if you don't mind." The Marquis gave his hand to the princess and followed the king, who went first. They passed into a spacious hall, where they found a magnificent feast, which the ogre had prepared for his friends, who were coming to visit him that very day, but dared not to enter, knowing the king were there. His Majesty was perfectly charmed with the good qualities of my lord Marquis of Carabas, as was his daughter, who had fallen violently in love with him, and seeing the vast estate he possessed, said to him, after having drunk 5 or 6 glasses, "It will be your own fault, my lord Marquis, if you do not become my son-in-law." The Marquis, making several bows, accepted the honor which his Majesty conferred, and forthwith, the same day, married the princess. And the cat became a great lord and never again ran after mice except for entertainment. Moral: there is great advantage in receiving a large inheritance, but diligence and ingenuity are worth more than wealth acquired from others. Another moral: if a miller's son can win the heart of a princess in so short a time, causing her to gaze at him with lovelorn eyes, it must be due to his clothes, his appearance, and his youth. These things do play a role in matters of the heart. So here we have an inheritance story. Generally, the lands would not be broken up in Western European forms of land tenancy. Therefore, the first son will inherit the land and title. Now, the second son is not totally out of luck because there's still the clergy, which can afford a quite good living depending on the kinds of parish or lands or whatnot you get invested in. But for the third sons, it starts to be a problem. So you've got soldiering, which is, you can certainly have a rise in the ranks and have a good outcome, but you can also, of course, have a bad outcome. Otherwise, it's pretty much cards. It's not expected that a gentleman would work, but a gentleman does need money. So these are real problems. You can see them reflected in the stories of Western Europe at the time. But let me tell you the Bullwinkd version. All right, so here we have a pretty obvious opening joke. You could probably guess if you remember old cartoons how the cat got his boots. He sang on a fence horribly, and someone threw boots at him. But then the fellow thinks, I need my boots after all. So he goes after the cat, and he's going to throw the cat in the well. And the cat says, "Don't throw me in the well. I'm a magic cat. I can give you 3 wishes." So this is going to be a poison wish story. So first, the man wishes for great riches. So the cat signs him up for a title fight, boxing match, where he can earn, he can win like $10 million or pesos or whatever if he can last, 100 rounds. I think something outrageous like that. With the champion, which he does, surprisingly. And so he gets his money, but he's like, "Cat, keep the other wishes. I don't want any more." The cat's like, No, you got 2 more wishes coming to you. So the second wish, he wishes for a house. And here we have the ogre's house. The ogre's in there. They go to rent the house, but the price is double what he won. So he can't get this house. But the cat releases termites in the house. So now that the house is falling down, he says to the ogre, "Hey, you're missing a chance to unload this piece of garbage on a dummy over here." And so the ogre takes the guy's money, and now he's got a falling down house. So the man's like, "Please, cat, no more wishes. Leave me alone." The cat's like, "All right, if you don't want true love." So then he's like, "All right." So of course, the third wish is he wants to get married, and the witch or the cat gets him like a super spoiled princess who just like, nagging and overbearing and complaining and just making the man's life a misery. And one thing she asks for is a fur coat. Of course, the man is totally broke at this point. He goes to the cat. He's like, "Listen, cat, please, I can't take any more from her. I've got to give her a fur coat. Can you please give me one more wish?" The cat said, "Nope, I'm done with you. I gave you your 3 wishes. All your problem now." And, turnabout is fair play. The man says, "Okay, very good." And as is foreshadowed in the original version, in this case, the cat does get skinned to make a fur coat for the wife. And the man gets his boots back. And that's the crazy, fractured fairy tale version of Charles Perrault's Puss in Boots, from the Histoire ou Conte du temps passé, avec des moralités, Conte de la mère, Conte de ma mère, l'œil. L'œil being goose, from Mother Goose stories. Hope you enjoyed it.